So, welcome, welcome, welcome. Thanks for making it in the middle of the day. So, this is Jeff Molter, and he is the current or the upcoming president-elect of the American Association of Nurse Anesthesiology. Um, so that's a really big organization. It's like 63,000 people, 62 by last count, but everybody knows it's 63 now. And then, so I want to tell you a little bit about Jeff because he won't be as magnanimous. He'll be so self-deprecating, and I need you to understand like the things this guy has done. So, in 2013, the state of Ohio did a re-evaluation or a re-look at our scope of practice. The then governor or attorney general was the current governor, Mike DeWine, and he said that we weren't allowed to order as CRNAs. And so those of us who worked in independent practice out in all over the state, which is a significant amount of us, went one day we were ordering left, right, and center to the next day we couldn't order anything. That was a really big deal. And we were not politically or organizationally equipped to put the fight forward that we needed to. And Jeff Molter got involved with the state organization, and through incredible attention to current practice and within organizations and through getting help and getting the information he needed, he began the process of creating a team that successfully passed legislation through Ohio for the first time in Osana's history so that we could order. And that's no small feat. And he was 100% the jumping off point for that. So he won't tell you that, like, oh, it's a team and all this stuff, but he started the party. So I'm giving him credit for that. On top of that, in the meantime, in his spare time, he is running around running his own business and his own anesthesia business. And he just by chance started a company called Black Buddy with a friend of his. And this he did do collaboratively. So I will give Scott a little bit of credit there. So Black Buddy was the first block app for anesthesia practitioners. There was nothing. The ASA hadn't done this. Nobody had done this. Jeff and his buddy were the first guys to do it. And it's an amazing piece of work. And he sold out several years ago, and then the AANA actually ended up buying it. So that's pretty amazing. So lots of great stories. So, and as he's moving forward through his work within the organization, Jeff has done a million things that have helped people in not just anesthesia, but nurses in general across the board. So he's a huge advocate for advanced practice nurses. And he is going to be our president in a year or 2 years. So we're very excited to have him here today. And I am really excited because he's my personal mentor. A while ago, a couple of us, that team that he started, I was one of the people that was dragged along in this process. And I'm always really grateful to him. And Jeff will, when you read about what leadership is and you read about the things that people do, Jeff does all of them. He's extremely generous. He will lift you up. He is the person that is supporting all the people around them to be successful. He has nothing, he is always on the right side of the fence. He does the correct things to move the organization forward, to move nurses forward, to create a better space for us. So I think that's enough cheering. And I would like to introduce to you Jeff Molter and let him talk about his leadership journey.
Well, thanks, Suze. That was an awesome introduction. And you were a huge part of that team that got us moving in the right direction to pass legislation in Ohio. And as Susie said, that was no small endeavor. I mean, our association in Ohio has been around since 1935, and we have never passed any legislation in the state of Ohio. So that was a huge lift. And I've learned several things along the way, and definitely you have to accomplish things as teams. And when it comes to leadership, it's interesting because I would never call myself a leader. But when people like Susie, who are leaders themselves, say that you're a leader, that's very humbling and very kind, and it means a lot. It really does, because I think in leadership, real leaders don't call themselves leaders, because you're trying to do the right thing, and you're trying to move your organization, your company, your family, your school, your people in a direction, and you're trying to do it for others, not for yourself. And I'm a big follower of a gentleman named Jim Collins, who wrote the book Good to Great. I highly recommend it. He's written several books. He is a Stanford professor, and he talks about level five leadership, which is, you work your way up this rung, and level five leaders really do put themselves or put their organizations in front of themselves, which separates them from managers or other types of leaders. I highly recommend his readings. I do a lot of time driving in my car because I live in Cleveland, Ohio, but I work in Findlay, Ohio, which is 2.5 hours away. I do stay there during the week, and I have a lot of time in my car, so I do listen to a lot of audiobooks. But yeah, thank you all for being here today. I'd be glad to answer any kind of questions, to talk to you about some of the things that I've learned along the way. When Susie asked me to do this maybe a month ago, it really got me thinking about things that I've learned along the way. And I think one of the most important things that I've learned is that putting yourself in uncomfortable situations, even though they're not fun and you're not in your comfort zone, help you grow as a person and help you grow as a leader. And I'll give you a couple examples. I've been working in Finley for quite a while, over 15 years. And there's a general surgeon I work with there, and he was going on mission trips to Haiti, and he would go with a team of people. He'd provide surgical care, and I volunteered to go with him one year, and I was the only anesthesia provider. It was me, a surgeon, two nurses, and a nursing student, and we were providing surgical care and anesthesia care to this entire community for an entire week, and we would do maybe 6 or 7 surgeries every day. And it's a very austere environment. You don't have all the luxuries that you have here. I mean, they have an air conditioner, but the thing dies by 9 a.m. and you're sweating bullets in the operating room. You're forced to work with equipment that's older. You have medications that, may not work because they've been sitting in this hot operating room for 3 months. And it's a very that experience was very humbling, and it was very uncomfortable, but I learned so much from it. So much that I went back 3 more years in a row doing that. And every time I went, I learned something a little bit new. Um, you want me to just keep talking, Susie, or do you want to? Okay. And I talk about being uncomfortable too. I will tell you that. So I mean, going through undergraduate school and graduate school, I absolutely dreaded presentations. I hated public speaking. I hated getting up in front of people, the usual stress response, sweaty palms, your heart's racing. And so I tried to kind of avoid public speaking at all costs. I wanted nothing to do with it. And then I went back to business school in my late 30s, early 40s. And I took this class, and it was called business marketing. And I had this professor. And at the time I took the class, I couldn't stand this guy because he forced you every week to be super uncomfortable. But from that, I learned so much. So what he would do is he would say, okay, get into a group of four. You get your group of four, and he would give you an assignment. He would say, next week, you're going to give a presentation on Goodyear Tire Corporation. I want you to talk about the stock performance. I want you to talk about their inventory. I want you to talk about their future, talk about their past, give a little bit about their history. He would give you this assignment, and he would assign it to four of you. And he'd say, come back next week. You're going to give a presentation on this. It's going to be 45 minutes long. So you would get into your group of four, and you would each practice your little section. I might have the intro, someone else has the middle, someone else has the end. Well, when it came time for your presentation, you would go up to the front of the classroom with your presentation, and he always threw a curveball at you. He would say, hey, Jeff, two of your colleagues missed their flight today. So just you and Joe are going to give the entire presentation. You're not going to divide it into four pieces. So he would do that to you. And then the following week, he would assign you another presentation. You would go up there with your group again, but now that you knew he threw curveballs at you, you were prepared for everything. So the second week, you'd go up in front of the class and he'd say, guess what, guys? Instead of a 30-minute presentation, the presentation ahead of you ran over. You have 10 minutes. I want you to spit out your presentation in 10 minutes. And then the following week, you would show up to do another presentation. He'd say, guess what, guys? The projector's not working. Your computer's not working. I want you to present today with no slides. And as you can imagine, being in that class, the amount of anxiety I had and stress getting up there every week to speak in front of 30 of my colleagues, it was very stress provoking. But at the end of the day, that was it was a real life experience, and it forced me to learn and learn more about myself. Now, public speaking now, I still have a little bit of anxiety, but I think that's a healthy anxiety because I just want to deliver something that people are interested in or something that people can learn from. But those are two examples of just situations where I was completely out of my comfort zone in both of those situations, and it helped me learn and grow as a person and as a professional. So
I'm just going to stop you right there because
yeah, yep,
I want to talk a little bit more about
yeah.
what happened from there. That was like, what, 10 years ago? Somewhere
What's
around
that?
the early
MBA school?
years.
Yeah, something like that,
Yeah.
13 or something like that.
So what's funny is, Jeff, weren't you recently invited to speak at a World Congress for anesthesia? I just want to, we make these guys do a lot of presentations and it drives you batty. And I just am really grateful that you went through that because that's how you prepare. You present, you present, you present, you present. And then all of a sudden, you're only concerned, like Jeff said, about making sure you have the right information and the right, instead of, oh my God, I'm going to screw it, like everything. You get so much better at it through this process. So,
Yeah,
and
you're
what
exactly
are you
right.
speaking about in Australia in
I'm going to
2020?
be talking about truncal blocks for abdominal and thoracic surgeries, and it's the International Federation of Nurse Anesthetists, which has a global meeting, I believe. Is it every 2 years, Susie? And their meetings are, I think their last one was in Croatia. This one's going to be in Australia. I was invited to speak at that, and I'm very I mean, I'm blown away that I'll be speaking at a World Congress because, like I said, I hated public speaking. I don't want to get in front of people. I don't want to talk. I mean, but uh, but after going through the things that I've done, every one of those things has helped me grow. Um, the other thing is Susie talked about this app called Block Buddy Pro. Um, when I was in business school, me and Scott Urigal started to dabble around teaching people how to do nerve blocks and abdominal blocks. And we noticed, this is back in 2011, I believe. And a lot of people like myself and Susie, when we went through our training program, there was no ultrasound guided nerve blocks. Ultrasound only existed for cardiac evaluations and OBGYN, people delivering children, but nobody ever thought to use ultrasound to locate peripheral nerves, to locate fascial planes in the human body, put numbing medicine around a specific nerve to numb up certain parts of your fingers or hand for surgery. So Scott and I, we were teaching these classes to people, and we started to compile all this information. And at one point, we were like, we should do an app and have an app and put it out there. And we dabbled in this app. And the first iteration of this app was, when we look back at it, we laugh. There were like 5 nerve blocks on it. We were selling it for $9.99. We didn't know what we were doing. We're going to Apple and Google, and they're taking a huge cut of the sales. And we really didn't know what we were doing. And over time, we brought in other professionals that knew the app space and brought in a professional medical illustrator from the Cleveland Clinic that, made real anatomy drawings, not I mean, we were such hillbillies. Like we would take a picture, he would take a picture of my leg, and then he would like colorize the area that the femoral nerve would cover. I mean, it was so bad. And we look back and we laugh, but we learned a lot, and it eventually evolved into an app that, there's thousands of them out there that have been sold. And, I no longer own it and Scott no longer owns it, but it's still kind of a cool story, I think. Try to think what else. When it comes to, again, like leadership, it's interesting because you have to have there's this mixed message that I'm going to give you today too, and that's, you need to be humble and have humility, but you also have to know when you can promote or brag about your profession, your company, your school, your church, your family, whatever organization you're trying to move forward, right? So, and I'll give you an example. So, Susie runs an OB practice in Scranton, Pennsylvania. If a legislator comes up to her and the legislator represents that area of the state and they meet Susie at some kind of fundraiser or something, hey Susie, what do you do? And if she doesn't say much and just says, "Oh, I'm a nurse anesthetist, I take care of patients." I mean, there is a prime opportunity right there to promote your profession because this legislator wants to know, what do you do for my constituents? Why are you important to our community? And Susie could say, we provide epidural services for your constituents. We make sure that the mothers are comfortable when they're delivering their children and they're safe. And if they have to have a cesarean section, we make sure that they're comfortable and taken care of. We make sure the mother and baby are safe. And it's just a prime opportunity to promote your profession. You're not promoting yourself, you're promoting your profession through things that you do, which I think there's a big difference there.
Talked a little bit about how you began the Block Buddy, and this feels like a podcast. I kind of love this. um, you talked about that, but one of the things that I think is really unclear when you're sitting in that position, you haven't started into a leadership journey. And I always call it a journey because just like you're never the leader. There's always a bigger fish. You know what I mean? There's always somebody who's done more, been more, has seen more. Like it's just being on a journey is humbling, right? So that's that for me is the balance. But it's unclear, like when you decided, hey, we need to tear this organization up all those years ago, who told you to do that? Who said it's okay for you to do that? Who invited you to do that? Do you see what I'm getting at?
I mean, that's a great question. And I think so. I graduated from anesthesia school in 2000. And although I was a member of my state organization, I was a member of my national organization, I wasn't super involved. I was probably the typical person that gets out of school. I got, loans to pay. I'm going to work hard. I'm going to do this, going to do that. And another CRNA that was involved in the state organization noticed how I ran our schedule at work, and he liked how I was as fair as possible when it came to giving people their days off and their vacation days and spreading the workload around. He's like, I think you should be a part of our state organization. I think you should, join a committee or join the board of directors. And so I was asked to become a part of something that I really knew little about. And again, this is one of those opportunities where it wasn't real comfortable. I show up in a meeting, there's 30 people in a room, they're talking some weird language, following Robert's Rules of Order. I'm like, I don't know what these people are talking about. You know what I'm saying, Susie, right? Um, but the more that I went to the meetings, the more I was engaged, and the more that I thought that our organization could do so much more. And I would sit there and say, how come we haven't done more? And how can I help us do more? And it started with, there's a board of directors. So there's 11 people at the state level that make the decisions for the entire state association. And, people have their preconceived thoughts and rationalizations for things. And I will tell you that our organization had a lobbyist who was also our attorney, he was in this position for 25 years. And I'm coming in there as a new person, and everyone is saying what a great job this guy has done. And I'm looking around like, we haven't passed any legislation. We haven't stopped any legislation of people that do some of the same things that we do. Like, what am I missing here? So, started to talk to other board members, and it took a while. And there, of course, we started to challenge the status quo, not just me, but other people on that board. And it eventually came to the point where it was so obvious to everyone that this lobbyist attorney was not the appropriate person for organization, and he had to go. He either had to resign or we had to fire him because he just was not getting the work done that our organization needed. And like Susie said, this was a time when, so in the state of Ohio, as CRNAs, when you looked at the language years ago, it said that we did not need prescriptive authority in order to administer anesthesia. That was a very broad gray area. So administering anesthesia, I don't need prescriptive authority. So if the patient is in the recovery room and they're vomiting and they need Zofran in their IV, if I go and I could go give it myself, I could administer it. But if I told an RN to give Zofran, the state of Ohio said that was prescribing and ordering. And as Susie said, we were all ordering for our patients until the Ohio Attorney General came out with this opinion and said, you guys can't do that. You guys are highly educated, you're highly skilled, but the way that the law is written, my interpretation is you cannot order an RN to give a medication. So, I mean, think about how significant that is. Think about if I'm working in a small community hospital and a patient is up on the fourth floor and they have a cardiac arrest and they need to be intubated, and they call me up there to intubate the patient, and I arrive there and I have my succinylcholine, I have my propofol, I have my medications that I need to give in order to intubate the patient. I could administer them myself, but I could not hand a syringe to a nurse and say, give 80 milligrams of succinylcholine. Think of how dumb that is. It was so dumb. And showing legislators how important this was, it was so clear to them, and we started bringing them into the operating room. As a matter of fact, I had a senator that shadowed me one day, and she, walks in the operating room with me. The surgeon's in the lounge drinking coffee. It's just me, the circulating nurse, the OR nurse. I'm the only anesthesia person in the room. I pre-oxygenate the patient. I tell the patient, pick out a nice dream. I push all the medications. I put the patient to sleep. I put the endotracheal tube in. I hook them up to the breathing circuit. I turn on some anesthesia. And the state senator is like looking around, and she's like, yeah, your opposition said that the surgeon tells you what to do. And I'm like, well, as you can see, the surgeon is not telling me what to do. The surgeon tells me what surgery the patient's having, and they will request a type of anesthetic, but I'm the expert in anesthesia. I'm the one that decides if that request is appropriate or not. And but it was very eye-opening to this senator because she saw that I was administering these medications. I was picking all the dosages. I opened up a drug cart. There's 50 drugs in there. Any one of them can kill a patient if you give the wrong dose. But when I walk into the recovery room and I step over this magic yellow line, all of a sudden I lose all my knowledge and I can't tell a nurse to give 4 milligrams of Zofran to a patient. I mean, think of how dumb that is. And once the legislators saw this, it took a while. It took a lot of time, education, took a lot of money. That is one thing about politics. It's the ugly truth. We don't like to talk about it, but you have to. Money doesn't buy you votes. It is completely illegal. However, donating gets you in the game, and it gets you FaceTime with legislators, and it makes them, I guess, more willing to listen to your side. It doesn't mean they're going to vote your way, but they're more willing to listen to what you have to say. And there's this old saying, and I don't like it, but it's probably true. But it's like if you're not at the table, you're on the menu, and that is very true. Um, but I always would say that there's a lot of people sitting at the table, and are you sitting at the little baby chair, or are you sitting in the big boy chair that they're gonna listen to more, I guess I would say. So for many years in our state association, we thought we were at the table and we were fooling ourselves. We weren't even in the game. We weren't even in the game. And but once we made some changes and got a new lobbying group and got a new board of directors in there, we had people with more energy, people that wanted to make changes and weren't afraid to make waves. So that sound accurate, Susie?
Yeah, I mean, it's so you had passion about our profession. And that's the thing about Jeff is that he is super passionate about what we do. And so I just want to be clear with everyone that your journey and your passion is what creates your leadership opportunities. It's not, nobody said to Jeff, hey, Jeff, why don't you go clean this up? He had gotten this business degree because of his work with Block Buddy. And then he ended up on the getting involved on the board because of all the things that were going on. And no one said to him, your experience really aligns with shaking this organization up and showing them what modern organizations look like. Because I mean, that's the problem, right? Is that if
Mm.
an organization stays stagnant, then we end up, falling way behind. And so that is a good segue for another topic. Can you talk a little bit about how on the national level we've seen some of those changes too? So Jeff, transition. I also want to say like, it's almost like you go to college doing your state organization and you get kind of all the information you need and it's a whole different thing and you're really hands-on and you're doing all of the things. And then Jeff ran for the national organization and that kind of changed his life again.
And yours too, right? Yeah, Susie and I both serve on the national board of directors, the American Association of Nurse Anesthesiology, which is a phenomenal organization. As Susie said, we have about 63,000 members, and incredibly, about 87% of nurse anesthetists or CRNAs belong to our organization, that's a phenomenal number. That's a phenomenal amount of professionals belonging to any organization. But when you see the work that the organization does advocating for CRNAs at the state level and at the national level, I'm not surprised that that many CRNAs belong to our organization. I would like it to be more, but it is what it is. Um, Going from the state association to the national association was a big eye opener for me because at the state level, we have maybe 2,400 CRNAs in the state of Ohio. We have 11 people on the board of directors, all from the state of Ohio. Well, when you run for the national organization, first of all, you have to run for the position. You have to be voted into the position. It doesn't matter who you are, where you're from, what you've done, what you haven't done, but you have to convince your colleagues to check a box. And once a year, we have an election, and it's a very uncomfortable thing because I grew up in the nursing profession. I'm not like used to running for things, and I talked about the whole being humble, but you have to know when you can kind of brag. And when you're running for one of these positions, you have to brag. You have to tell people what you've done and what you're good at and why you're the right person. And if you're one of the people chosen, you're now on this national board of directors and you serve a 2-year term. Uh, I was very shocked when I got to the national board of directors because, like Susie said, I thought I was going from the minor leagues to the big leagues or going from high school to college. But when I got on the board of directors at our national association, there was a lot of turmoil going on at the time. There were people that were on the board of directors that I would definitely say they were not level 5 leaders. We had a lot of people that were self-serving, and they weren't afraid to tell you about it. The organization has a lot of money, so we actually have headquarters in Chicago, And we have a staff of about 115 people that actually do work on behalf of the organization. And all of those people work under the CEO, who's the chief executive officer. Well, as the board of director, the chief executive officer is our one employee. So our board of directors gives directives to the CEO, and then the CEO carries out those directives. And when I first got on the national board, we were on like our third CEO in 5 years. A lot of instability, a lot of personalities. I talked earlier about being uncomfortable helps you grow, and I will definitely say it was a very uncomfortable time for me because I went from the state organization where I felt like the board became very tight and we were all moving in the right direction. We're all oaring the boats in the right direction, and it made it more fulfilling. It made it easier. It was just I don't know. It was a great experience. And then when I got to the national level, I was expecting it to be better, and it was actually worse than the state association. And I stuck with it. Susie is one of my people that I talked to. I'm like, Susie, you gotta run for a board position because we need level 5 leaders on this board of directors. We can't continue to have people that are self-serving on this organization because we're never going to get anywhere. Um, and Susie ran a year and a half ago, and she's on the board of directors with me now, serving a 2-year term. I hope she continues on. But besides Susie, we had other leaders join the fray and get in, and we've had really good presidents of our association. And it's a very weird thing because our members also elect the president of the board of directors, which is an interesting thing because we have 63,000 members, probably 8,000 of those members vote, and then they decide who's going to be the president of the association. But the president is not the king or the queen of the organization. You're essentially the chairperson of the board of directors, and your job is to help the board of directors make decisions that move the organization forward and that you represent all CRNAs, which is a very difficult thing. And that's one of the pains with the growth and the amount of members that we have is that we have tons of subsets of CRNAs. We have what they call independent CRNAs. We have rural America CRNAs. We have military CRNAs. We have educator CRNAs. We have pediatric CRNAs. And every one of those groups of people have different wants and needs. And our job as the board of directors is to try to move all of us in the same direction. And it's not always easy, but it's a great challenge. And Susie and we're both up for it, right?
Well, you mentioned Robert's rules, which is funny because we just had an assignment that said, "Hey, do you know what Robert's rules is, or do you know parliamentary procedure?"
Yeah.
And it's Jeff and I are both going to start laughing about parliamentary procedure because it's a big deal, right? When you have that many people and when you have, the big votes, and we actually have a parliamentarian who, for all of my psych mental health people, is probably on the spectrum.
Just a
Loves,
little.
loves his parliamentary
Yes, he
procedure.
does.
Yeah. So it's good. I mean, it's an interesting learning process, but one of the things that you can talk about, Jeff, which I think is really important, is how I'm I'm not saying that you did it by yourself, but I'm saying that the group coming in, change was also happening on the national level as Jeff came through. I just frankly ride Jeff's coattails. That's really my
Yes.
role here.
Stop.
But but as he's coming through, one of the things that I had no idea and thought was utterly the most ridiculous thing I ever heard was this enormous organization demanded that a CRNA was the CEO. Now, I don't know how many of you out there getting your doctorate are running 100 plus employee organizations that serve 63,000 people. I'm sure you're an expert in those things. I am not. And I don't know anybody who's a CRNA who that's their primary expertise, right? Like that is not something. So if you want to talk a little bit about how that process moved through and how we voted on that and what changed and what really kind of changed the drive of you. You talk about moving the organization forward. How did you guys as leaders create that situation?
Yeah, Susie's exactly right. Our organization has been around a long time, 94 years or something like that, and 93 years. But we have bylaws that we follow, and in our bylaws, we it stated that the CEO of the organization has to be a CRNA. And I'm sure when these bylaws were written in 1931 or whenever they were written, that that was probably a great idea, right? But as this organization grew from 1,000 members to 10,000 members to 20,000, 50,000, 60,000 members, why would you restrict your CEO position to someone that's a CRNA? And I know like the thinking was probably well intended and, well, if someone's going to run this organization that represents CRNAs, they should probably be a CRNA. I mean, I'm sure that's what they thought when they created this. But, think about all the great CEOs that you've learned from, or I know there's a bunch that I've learned from. I mean, Steve Jobs, I mean, say what you want about him, he's a little bit of a weird guy, but the guy everything that guy touched turned to gold. I mean, he was probably on the spectrum, but he just created successful organizations. Everyone that he went to were successful. And if he wanted to be the CEO of the American Association of Nurse Anesthesiology, he's not qualified. He's not a CRNA. I mean, is that really something that we're going to decide that we don't want someone as a CEO of an organization because they're not a CRNA? So what we had to do is get our bylaws changed. And in our organization, the way that you change the bylaws is you have to have essentially a resolution or a bylaws change come to the membership. And once a year, we have a business meeting at our national meeting, and the members will vote on bylaw changes. And when this bylaw change was being voted on, there's at the national meeting, it's a big show. You got the microphone that people walk up to and they say why you should do it. Then we have a microphone that's, people line up and say why you shouldn't do it. And you hear both sides of the debate. And then the entire membership has the ability to vote on this. And I'm glad that they voted to change that bylaw so that it doesn't restrict us from just having a CRNA be the chief executive officer of a $60 million organization. I mean, I'm sure there are some CRNAs in the country that are qualified to run the ANA, but why would you restrict that? I mean, it doesn't say you can't pick a CRNA, but it definitely opens up the job to 250 million more people, which I think is the smarter thing. And but Susie's right. That was one of the changes that our organization went through. And um, CRNAs were interesting creatures because we can justify every action that we do, whether it's 100% right or 100% wrong. And it's part of I think our training when we go through it, we're always drawing up medications, and the person you're working with that day will always say, "Hey, Susie, why are you giving a Nectine instead of Rocuronium?" And Susie's going to give her answers of why she's giving it, even if she's 100% right or 100% wrong. And I think some of our decision making carries over into our personal lives and into our association lives as well. I think that's just the makeup of how we are when it comes to decision making. Do you agree with that, Susie, or no?
Yeah, I think also what I find really interesting and we had just finished, like I said, this parliamentary procedure and how we have, I mean, it's a parliamentary procedure show. And so what I think is funny is people were passionate about an AANA leader or CRNA being the CEO.
Yep.
And, now in retrospect, everybody's like, oh, duh. Now we have a guy who actually has been an association managers, CIO, CEO of medical associations for 20 plus years. And this guy has such tremendous insight and has managed everything from orthopedic associations to well, what else?
Like IT,
Yeah,
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 IT
he's done
stuff.
so many
Yeah.
different things within the organizations. And he comes with just tremendous experience and understanding that a CRNA could never gain 20 years worth of experience of it. I'm going to argue that no, there's not, unless a CRNA decided to give up being a CRNA and work at that level within organization, association management, then they can't compete. These guys know what they're doing, and it's been a tremendous change. And so the parliamentary procedure, though, is so funny because there's some drama that goes on at that microphone. And one of the things that I think it forces people to do is to not just hear their own amygdala thoughts. You know, they're forced to kind of pull it out and put it in their frontal brain and listen and think. Now, people don't, but there are a lot of people that do. And I think that's what that we've seen a lot of that recently in recent years at the organization. So
Yeah,
um,
with the Roberts rules too. I mean, when I first went to a board meeting, I thought they were speaking a different language because essentially they are when you're talking about Robert's Rules of Orders, and they could be very formal, as they probably are in England in their parliament, or we have what's called small board rules, which are pretty informal, but the chair of the board, which is the president, is supposed to be directing the meeting at all times. They call it to order. They call the votes, give people the opportunity to speak. As a board member, you're not supposed to just grab the microphone and start talking. I mean, you're supposed to be called upon by the chair of the board of directors, which is the president. And I think this board of directors has been really good, Susie, with pretty much, I mean, we're not super sticklers with Robert's Rules of Orders, but we follow them pretty, I think, pretty well. And we have people around us to help us with them. I mean, I'm not going to read an 800-page book on Robert's Rules. I'm sorry. There's people at our association that can help us through that. And as Susie said, we actually have a parliamentarian that comes to our really big meetings when we have, you know, 1,500 people in a room, and 90% of them are members, and they are voting members and have an opportunity to speak at the microphones. So, and it's getting weird today too, because not weird, but it's just different because trying to implement technology into business meetings, um, again, we have 63,000 members, and when we have our national meeting once a year where bylaws are voted on and things are voted on, there might be 2,000 CRNAs there, and we're trying to evolve and make our business meetings online so that the other 60,000 some CRNAs at home can watch the business meeting, can participate, and can also vote when a vote is called. It used to be that the members in the room voted on motions right away. Well, now when something's put forth, it's actually goes to the membership, and I think there's like a 3-day period where all the members have an opportunity to vote on things. One of the things that we also changed recently was the name of our association, and this was another hot topic because our association has always been called the American Association of Nurse Anesthetists. And a group of CRNAs said we should change it to American Association of Nurse Anesthesiology. It's just anesthesiology is the science and specialization of anesthesia. It makes more sense. It's easier to say. It rolls off the tongue better. It makes sense. And they put forth a resolution to change the bylaws so that we can use both names. We use those names synonymously. And again, we had a pro microphone, a con microphone, and you had people arguing both ways. But in the end, the majority of the members voted to change the name to the American Association of Nurse Anesthesiology. So.
all right, we're at about 10 till. I want to open up to questions. Anybody have any questions for Jeff? It always takes a minute. Let me look at my chat here. What do we got? Oh, look at that. I did
Also,
record, right? You guys all got recording,
yeah.
right?
While you're waiting, while we're waiting, if people have questions, I'd love questions. I think an important thing too is as you start going through this process and becoming part of something, again, your organization, your hospital, your school, it's important that you bring people along, right? Because you want to build an organization that withstands the test of time and withstands when you leave, you want people to keep moving in a good and a positive direction. So what better way to do that than to recruit people, get people involved, explain to them the importance of being involved? Because again, I mean, what good does it do if you invest all this time and energy in your organization, but you don't bring others along with you to kind of continue on the work of the association or your school or your hospital or whatever it is that you're trying to move forward or represent. So I think one of the guys that was on our board, Michael Anderson, said something about, when you're climbing up a ladder, always reach back and pull people up with you. And I think that's a good thing to remember because again, and I'm going to be retiring in 15 years, and I I want CRNAs to continue to give patients great care, and I know I'm going to be having surgeries. I want to have good anesthesia, safe anesthesia. So I don't know, something to think about. I'm sorry, you're muted, Susie.
I was saying, if does anybody have any questions? If not, it's a quiet group today, but I loved the podcast format of this. This was fun for me.
Yeah, I mean, thanks for asking me to be on here, and
Yeah.
it's weird. I mean, I love to talk about the profession. I like to talk about nerve blocks. I like to talk about work and stuff like that. And but again, when you said talk about leadership, it's like it's a weird because I mean, who walks around talking about leadership? But I know that just being in these uncomfortable situations helps you grow. I would say that I imagine all of you in the audience here are very young and know that you have long careers ahead of you, which makes it that much more important that you're on the right side of the battles, right? I mean, Susie and I helping pass legislation that allows CRNAs to order. I mean, her and I, we're gonna benefit from that change for 10 to 15 years. If you're a CRNA and you just came out of school and out of training and you started when you were really young, you might be 28 years old. You're going to have 35 years in this profession to benefit from those changes. Um, so please try to get involved early if you can. So, hi, Janet. You have a question?
Janet's one of our instructors. She just
Oh,
popped
okay. Hi,
up.
Janet.
She's in California, so.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Um, all right. Anybody else? I'm so grateful, Jeff. I mean, that was a great sort of, and it was so timely. It was super, we had just had this discussion post that really was relevant to a lot of the stuff that you talked about. So thanks
Cool.
so much.
Cool. Yeah, thanks for having me, Susie. I mean,
Yeah.
this was really cool. It really got my wheels spinning in my head and making me think about a lot of things. And
You have to do is show up and keep learning. And
100%.
don't wait to be asked. If you have an idea, then it's your idea. Move forward. Get people to help you, and get experts and become the thing you're supposed to become.
Mhm. Yeah, thanks for having me again, Susie.
Yeah,
Great.
absolutely.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
All
Have a
right.
good
Thanks
rest of
so
your
much.
day.